Right, hello then, welcome to tonight's planning and environment. We'll go through the evacuation procedure first for everybody here that's not here every day. 5 minutes not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather on the opposite side, the Yorkshire Bank. Exit by the door by which you entered the room or by the fire exit, which are clearly indicated on standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. Please also make sure all your mobile phones are turned off or set to silent. This meeting will be getting recorded, so everybody's aware of that. Apologies.
I received apologies from Councillor Tricia Elliott and substitute John Glass, and also from Colty D. Ross.
Everybody did anything off anywhere else? No? Okay. Minutes of the last meeting. Unfortunately, I was in Jamaica, so is everybody happy that these minutes were a true record of the meeting? Keith, Christine, June, everybody okay? Declarations of interest, I'll just go with what's on the normal list, unless anybody's got anything else they want to add. Public consultation. Right then, down onto the monitoring of the ground maintenance. Over to you guys. Over to you first, is it?
I don't know how you want to do this, Chair. Do you want me to just present an overview of my report and then Glenda to give an overview of Glenda live before you ask any questions? Or do you want me to present my report, question, Glenda live? The two do run in, so...
Yeah, no, we'll do yours, then we'll do the video.
Okay.
And then we'll ask some questions.
Okay. I won't go through the report line by line because it's in the press last week. It's been well publicised, and I imagine members have been had a quick scan through. Nothing more. But I'll go to the salient points, if I may. During the summer, we've had difficult growing conditions. Primarily, I can't blame the weather all the time. But we have had a lot of wet and hot weather, which has seen growth in the freight from both in grass growth and in vegetation growth per se, weed growth, etc. This has caused us to have a high volume of both customer and member complaints, primarily about performance of Glendale. If I want to break those down quickly, in the main is weed growth in shrub beds along hard surfaces, and this is nothing more than members already probably know from what they're experiencing out there themselves from members of the public. Grass growth was a major problem at the beginning of the season, and it's continued through the year, and we're still cutting grass in November now, which is probably the latest we've ever cut grass in my whole working life. I've been doing it for 30 odd years. We've never cut grass in November before, and it's not highlighted here, but that's borne out by statistics that we've had over the last few days, which has seen vegetation probably 35% higher. This vegetation that we've taken to the green waste disposal unit of probably 35-50% higher than
it's
total
about
last year.
55% at the moment. We've still got a month of it to go.
So that is a tremendous amount of green waste, additional green waste, be it grass or shrub bed prunings or whatever, various types of things. Weed growth, grass growth around obstacles has been an issue this year. as I said, in shrub beds, and we had problems during the summer with the hot weather and in hanging baskets where we just didn't get enough water on them. They were watering 2 or 3 times a week, but the hanging basket suffered as a consequence of that. And we also had delays in the arrival of a side-arm flail, which I know my colleagues over here will probably allude to if we had a chance. And maintenance of housing areas was particularly problematical at certain points of the year, as members have made brought to our attention, and as members of the public have brought to our attention through the year. As a consequence of that, we did issue and have worked with Glendale on issuing a number of rectifications throughout the year. This amounts to 89 in total, but to give some context to that, Glendale, well, not Glendale, the contract does allow us to issue up to 100 rectifications a month before we actually enter into a default kind of situation. So 89 is a lot, but to contextualise that we can issue 100 in a calendar month before any breach of contract has to be kind of discussed. We've been having a discussion well before that, but they can be issued up to 100 in a calendar month. Sorry, that was to give some context on that. But as a consequence of their perceived performance during the year, Glendale did come in with the director and he did your director. Apparently they met with the managing director and Phil, and they had to put forward an improvement plan about how they were going to tackle issues that they were having this year and last year, this coming year. So, and that does link in directly with Glendale Live and how that will monitor how you operate over the year. We can see it as officers. We can actually link into that. We can see where things have been done at any one given time. We can relay that back to customers, relay that back to members. And I don't want to not want to put across what you're going to say. And I haven't seen this, by the way, but I know this operates. We can log in. We think customer services operatives will be able to log in. I know we haven't discussed that yet, but our customer services operators downstairs. So when a customer rings and says when are they due, we should be able to tell you directly when that's due. We haven't had that facility up to this point. And to be fair, the contract didn't actually suggest that we should have that, and this is something that Glendale have introduced as a consequence of the improvement plan and works that we've been doing with them over a period of time. So I know Ben will come on to that in due course. Excuse me. Monitoring per se, although we did encounter a number of problems during the year, for monitoring, when we go out on a site, we monitor what those standards are. On a formal site, we could have 10, 12, 15 particularly different operations. So if 13 of those are fine, we have to mark accordingly. There's no weighting given to any one particular item, so we don't say grass cutting's got 50%, so if it's incorrect, that's 50% marked down. It's 15 separate, it could be up to 15 separate items. So formal monitoring has been very, very good during the year, above the 85% requirement. It's been just above 85% on every month. Informal monitoring, however, has been a problem. It's below the 65% required, or that we should attain. And a lot of that has been to do with the lack of machine, which I think these guys will come on to. The side-arm flail, it didn't come at the appropriate time, for whatever reason. And as a consequence, a lot of at the beginning of the year in particular, when you need to do your certain works, taking off vegetation, etc., that wasn't done, and that is why that mark is reflected in that. There should be major improvements going forward, I imagine, with this new bit of kit that's been introduced. Customer satisfaction, and I think it speaks for itself really. We continue to send out a number of customer satisfaction cards, and I know that Glendale guys, they put out a number each month as well. We continue to get 0 returns from those. We are going to push this out to colleagues in downstairs, and customer services downstairs to do some send it out more volume, and we're going to look at how we do that across each ward of the borough, and so we get a wide kind of space, not the word, wider the spread as possibly possible. So and we can tend to do that as of next month. So maybe that will have some bearing on that. And we also are still looking at some form of system on the IT when you on the IT system when you log on that can be linked. And we are still using some of our colleagues in IT to see how that works. And we've not really pushed that forward at the moment. And that is it in overview. If I can, you've got these gentlemen to.
Is everybody happy to go straight on to the Glendale presentation? No, well, the last question, because we don't want to cross over everything. We've got one tonight. So do you want us to move out of the way?
Yeah, we've got Ben. I don't know what your role is.
My name is Ben White, I'm Head of Business Development for Glendale. I'm here because my department oversees and introduces Glendale Live, which is our cloud-based works monitoring system across Glendale. So just a quick overview of the system. This was the second iteration of this system. We had one prior. This is our in-house development, which we rolled out. It's mandatory on all our new contracts, and it's been rolled out, and by March 2018 it will be across all our Glendale contracts and existing ones. So during this winter period it's been introduced to the Nuneaton contract, which is one of our bigger contracts, so it is taking more effort and a bit more work from our side of things. So it's good, okay. It's a live real-time reporting system, so it's cloud-based on the Google network. Glendale basis, IT base is Google, so it's on a SQL database. It's held in the cloud, and that allows us to share internally, openly and transparently, and also allows us the ability to share to dedicated and specified license users outside of Glendale. And that's one of the features with it. We can share to the client offices of our contracts the real-time live data of where we are. Developed in-house, that gives us a lot of flexibility. We haven't yet introduced this to a contract where we haven't had to tweak it to specific requirements or specifications of the contract, and we haven't failed yet to manage that. So that's something to do carefully. It is a generic system, but we have the ability in-house to manipulate it a bit. It is Google-based, so if you're used to using Google and the apps on your hands and the desktops, it's that usability and interface to it. All the information within the IP is stored on a single database, as I say, in the cloud, and we have the ability to export that, to interrogate it, so the managers can draw reports. And one feature as well is that we commit that the IP at the end of any contract will be exported fully and delivered to the clients at no cost. So, you know, our clients and you can all be assured that the contract data we collate, there is a vast amount, is exportable and is owned by the client at the end of the day. The workflow in it is between a mobile app, which I'll just show you in a minute, and a desktop. So the manager and the administrator of a contract manages the contract on a desktop version. Our handsets are each dedicated to a specific team leader, so that we've got a bit of security and ownership role in there. And it's pushed out from our system to the handset overnight, any schedule updates or work program updates, and the handsets feed back into the system about every 3 to 5 minutes. And it's that live reporting that is beneficial. It records its geotag status, so we're using the GIS in the phone where the phone is, and if we take any photos, their time, date and geotag times as well within the system on the desktop system. And it's the desktop system the managers use, and it's a desktop version that the client access is into, so it really does provide that real-time notice. There's 3 sections to getting Glendale Live stood up on a contract. So first of all, and this is where my department come in, we identify every job, what we class as a job within a contract, and that's a task to be carried out to a feature, a specific location. So to cut the grass at a park is one job. We collate all those, put them into a big CSV file, a big spreadsheet for want of a word, and import all that in a standardised form. There are certain fields that have to be standardised within there, so the location data, so that we have a mapping system that the Google system can find the location. But then we have pretty much an unlimited amount of spare fields, which we then dedicate to whatever specific contract or area location needed. Example, when we're doing play inspections, we're able to record against each job the serial number of specific items, so that you've got an auditable trail of works completed to a position, any risks, repairs or whatever. That way we can tailor it to it. There's a lot of information stored in there, so the jobs go in, we've got the filterability to do it per contract, per team, per feature, and they all go in. Example, I think we've only even sort of 3,000 jobs, which in terms of sheet, if you can imagine. It's a great deal of information. And then we schedule a job within Glendale Live. So a schedule is when a job needs to be carried out. So it's quite the initial setup and function is done in terms of business development and the local contract, because we aim to set up an annual programme of works for that contract, so that within Glendale Live and visible to our contracts manager as a tool and to the client is the full yearly annual works programme going forward. There are various abilities in it to do the frequencies, so that we can shorten or lengthen them. We can put individual jobs in, or if it's a fortnightly grass cut that we know is going to be a repeated version, we can times it by the frequency and it'll program that for us. But that's where we aim to be, and it certainly comes sort of in line next year's when Nuneaton will be programmed with an annual transparent schedule of works in place on Glendale Live that you'll have access to, which a special client will also have access to. In terms of managing the schedules as they're recorded, it's probably a good time to show you this. So this is just an example of the phone. They're just mobile phones that we have for the teams, but the Glendale Live is just an app that we have through our internal Play Store, like you would for your own phone. And that's the vision that comes up on the team's handset. So it's a list of the jobs that to do in the route order they're supposed to do them, and they have options within it. So whatever job details should be in, what they should be doing, and they can click in progress, completed, unable to complete, not required. Some of them trigger certain requirements. So if they push there's an issue on site or they're unable to complete, the app automatically requires them to take a photo and just join from a drop down of what the actual issue is. That's reported back live. One of the big features we've found with the scheduling management, with the systems in place now, is an example being where a call comes into a customer service desk that we've seen the team being, they've applied, they went to site A, they didn't do site B and they went to site C. If the team's then recorded that as completed, unable to complete, and completed on C, it's very quick then to go into Glendale Live C, and an issue is recorded against the schedule. You can see there was a car parked on site B, or the gate was missing or was locked and they were unable to access. It really has shortened and enabled to create a noticeable trail of what's gone on, and also made it very quick and transparent as to what's gone on and why the teams have made a certain action or decision. All the teams, as I say, within Glendale Live, the handsets are specific to a team leader. Within Glendale, we work that we provide ownership to the team leaders of all operations, and this is further sort of enabling to do that. They get visibility of 3 days forward schedule and 7 days behind. So I think this is just some test data to do a demonstration. You can see where the schedule's gone red. That means it's gone past. So 5 days behind it will show, but it will show in red just to remind them they're behind. It also allows them to sort of forward progress. So if it's raining, they're able to spray, or for whatever reason they can't carry out works, they've got other works forward that they can see visibility of and manage their own workload to a certain extent. And it's all recorded in. And as I say, their actions and what they carry out and complete and mark as complete is done live. The data that comes back from that schedules page is what sort of the contracts managers work on a day-to-day. So they're monitoring very closely completed works against scheduled work dates, and they want those to be as close as possible, and justification for whatever reason there may be between a variance of those two things. Then what we also develop, and this is much more useful we think for sort of our directors and our clients, is a dashboard. This is something my department puts together, and we tailor it to whatever I won't say issues, but whatever you find is the most frequently asked question or the most frequently tested against the metric that you've got on your contract. So for instance, a director might want to know, show me all my contracts in my region, and just anyone who's struggling behind in the last 3 days will come up as red. A lot of our clients want to know, completed schedules. They don't want to know day to day, but if in a week all the work's expected in a week have been completed, but they do want to know issues relating to dog waste, because they've got a particular issue or they've got a particular enforcement going on. So we can tailor that dashboard that is bringing up very quick, easy, simple, clear sort of results out of Glendale Live, and showing the charts there showing the completion dates of each team, the completion dates over the week. So you can see the Team 1 West, for instance, where in the yellow they've got behind on that day, where they overachieve and come back, they achieve more than 100% within a day. And it's those sort of metrics that we can very easily measure and test and record. I just want to hopefully, and I'm struggling because I'm dependent on my phone's tethering abilities to show the internet. We're up to with Nuneaton. It's been running, I think, since about September time. We've had it across a few teams operating it, litter bins and stuff. But a quick thing of the issues recorded to date. So these will be recorded by the teams. And it just gives you, so this is where the teams have gone on site, for whatever reason, they've wanted to record an issue against a certain job or schedule. It records the photograph, it's not a great one. Sorry. You know, they've been unable to cut that piece of grass, spray that out that fence line, whatever the reason is, they've written down and they've taken a photo. This is probably the element of Glendale Line that we underestimated how effective it would be during the year. During this season, on the contracts that have had it, the amount of communication that's been cut down, unnecessary communication, because it's very clear, when a picture tells 1,000 words, and the report is usually very simple, the team haven't been, or the work hasn't been completed. Well, it's all Google, so you know, you search for in hidden with a name, with a road name, a site name, it comes up and immediately you've got a real-time report of what the team have done. There's been instances, and it works both ways, there've been instances where we've had it with the team, haven't recorded anything, that's on our managers to correct that and make sure they are doing. But we've found the teams have taken it upon themselves to proactively report what's going on. They've quite valued, certainly where there's been repeat things, where we're on contracts that are established now, where they've felt they've not been able, there's been a certain repeat issue, they've been able to justify it and say, look, this is a repeat thing. And on certainly on a lot of housing contracts, our clients have used it in enforcements in terms of providing evidence of a repeat offender of a certain position. What else have we got here? So with Nuneaton at the minute, we've got 395 jobs in, so we're a little bit behind the curve. We need to get another 2,500 in. But this is how the information sits in there. The schedules are created against it, and there's almost a limitless amount of information in there. But we tailor it to whatever the manager needs to operate on a day-to-day basis, and then in terms of analysing and giving charts to the client, whatever's important to them as well. That is me. I hope that was clear. Does anyone want to see the handset or is there anything about further?
No. Thank you very much for that. Right. Over to the group for questions then. So, any questions? Keith?
I might as well start, as I have loads of issues. One of the things that would potentially be good is if we could actually have more resources when things go wrong, because obviously we've got a massive issue with grass cutting, particularly at the housing complexes this year. And when we get behind, we just then get a downward spiral, because the grass is then longer, the quality of the cut is worse and things. So, it'd be useful to know if we can actually borrow resources from anywhere else or change the staffing levels when we have got problems, because it seems that we just go down a black hole in terms of you get a backlog, you get more customer complaints. B, information flow is really important, because I would get less calls as a councillor if my residents knew the grass was going to cut on Friday rather than this, it is now this long. And so there is possibilities of things. But where are we with making sure that next season we have got it properly resourced? And also a question for Paul, if we haven't got enough people to cut the grass at our complexes, can we actually get someone else in actually to do the work? Because my residents don't care who cuts the grass, they just want it cut, and it has got ridiculously behind.
Paul, do you want to
Answer first.
Yeah, please.
Do you want to answer your questions
I'm not
first?
sure what we've put a plan in place to resolve any resourcing issues.
Well, this year alone, we put 2 additional larger cut collections on purely for the complexes type grass. I mean, again, I don't, the last sort of 3 years I've been here, I've sort of been blaming weather conditions, whatever. But as Paul alluded to before, one of the best KPIs we've got, last year we took 870 tonne of green waste for recycling. Majority of that is grass clippings from complexes. To date this year, it's 1,255 tonne. And at the moment, I know the grass is still growing, and we will not stop grass cutting. But as I say, what we've put in place, because of the sort of the last 2 years and the information that we've got, we've put the 2 additional mowers in place, and we've also set up accounts now with hire companies that will keep machines available, because that's probably had in the past. Last year, when we sort of getting to the sort of critical stage, it's almost impossible to hire them. As Paul alluded to before, with the sidearm float for this year that put us behind. We went to McConnell's, we bought a brand new one. Because of the nature of industry across the board at the moment, they don't keep them on the shelf. And when they keep saying it'll be ready next month, it'll be ready next week, it sort of puts you in a difficult position, because if they turn around and say it won't be ready for 6 months, we could go to subcontractors or whatever. So.
And the question to Paul about, when we aren't getting the complexes cut every 2 or 3 weeks, when it does get out of control, can we bring someone else in, or?
It's not as simple as that. Because it's the cost is the overriding feature here. We haven't got the budgets to start bringing in additional resources at cost, and their availability, they're not always there. If Glendale aren't meeting their requirements, and I think it's every 15 working day, or thereabouts, given the fact that we've got to take into consideration grass growth, weather conditions, etc., bank holidays. We did an example at Nuneaton Road this year where we had a customer complaint, and when the customer complaint was we hadn't cut it X, Y, and Z. And when we went back through, and we actually went back through and picked out some of the things that Glendale Live we've been doing the testing at the time, we were 2 days late on one site, 1 day late on another site, and 4 days late on the following. So they were almost meeting. They not bang on, but they were almost meeting, and I'm not making any excuses. Glendale here to defend themselves, but as a client officer, I'm going to ensure that we're getting value for money. But when they're almost meeting their obligations, it's difficult for me to start wielding a big stick and saying you're not doing this, you're not doing that, when there are extenuating circumstances. But to answer your question directly, we haven't got the resources.
Almost meeting the obligations, Chair, is where the contract normally runs at the moment, rather than occasionally not meeting the obligations.
I disagree.
Well, you've had your answer, your question answered there, Keith. No, we can't do that. Julian?
Thanks, Chair. I'm a bit mystified with the word sidearm. You just alluded to it then. It's a hedge cutter, I believe.
Yes.
It's a reach mower that fits on
It's a hedge cutter. It fits on the 3-point linkage of a tractor. Has a head that goes down like that.
Yeah.
What size is the head, please?
1.75.
1.2 or
1.75.
Pardon?
1.75, I think it is.
I don't make a 1.75 for that. It's either a 1.2 or I sell them basically. At 1 point, and we stock them when we're only up the road at Twycross. I'm bemused because you said last year you'd got 2 machines on, which would be this hedge cutter and an ordinary grass cutting mower, but we're still behind on the grass cutting, and I don't think you've got the correct machines for the correct jobs. A hedge cutter can cut the side verges depending on what side flails, but you can't cut the hedges, I don't think, till August because the birds are nesting. So that's one machine out because the county council do the verges, and then you've got an ordinary.
No, we've got the rural verges with the sidearm.
You've got an ordinary 6-foot mower on the front then, on an ordinary John
No,
Deere.
we just literally do, I think it's a metre strip.
A metre strip.
Metre strip.
Metre strip with a sidearm.
I think that is
Edge cutter.
I can't.
I think it is a 1.2.
What model edge cutter is it?
Look on.
Yeah. Well, if it was a 5.4 55, we stock them, and we've got stocked 7 days a week.
Is this a sales meeting now?
No. It's just that we could have helped.
Yeah, Julian. Just stick to
I just think-
basic questions.
I just think we were badly let down on the grass cutting, and we have it every year. And will you be adding any more machines for next year?
Yeah. So we stocked up, partway through this year. Obviously, we put our capex request in for next year. Again, we'll concentrate more on the cold collects, we can get them off quicker.
Thank you.
Right, so sorry, did you say you have more machines next year?
Yeah.
Anybody else on questions? Keith?
Just one more thing. When there's an instance of sweet breaks, we've had some paving slabs broken when you're pulling a tree out. It'd be more useful if councillors were told about it, so we don't actually then react to complaints and things. And Yeah, there's always going to be accidents, and we don't blame people for accidents. It's the communication after the accident that's useful.
Sorry, Keith, I missed the. Sorry,
Well,
I just
I'm
apologise.
It's the communication after you've had an incident or an accident. We had the paving slabs broken at Cleaver Gardens with the JCB going over putting the tree out. We had the incident of the grass being poisoned at on St Nicholas Park when the drop down went wrong and you put weed curd over all the verges. So when there are these incidents, it's useful to have a communication system back so that actually we're not sort of just fielding complaints from residents.
So you're about communication.
Yeah.
But with rural, the life would take
Will help,
care of
yeah,
that, wouldn't it?
should do.
I should imagine.
But equally, we will communicate that to the council officers, you know, as soon as we know about it, so they are aware.
And it get back to the councillors.
So,
Yes, with regards to the grass cutting season next year, since it seems to be a trend that we're showing more and more each year to get the grass cut, would it be possible to start a week or two beforehand?
Well, the plan to be put in for next season, we've sort of scheduled it or set it up. We're going to be taking the seasonal staff is obviously what we bring in mainly for the grass cutting. They'll be starting sort of 6-8 weeks earlier than we would normally, just to make sure we get it up to the best standard. I mean, it is awkward at the moment because obviously we will continue grass cutting for as long as we need to do. But obviously you can imagine at the moment we're trying to sort of tie in the servicing and the repair of everything for ready for next year. So, you know, that will all be in place, and as we say, everything will be ready. You know, I mean, theoretically, we might not stop grass cutting, but certainly from a staffing point of view, they're going to be 6 to 8 weeks earlier than we would normally look to.
Yeah.
And that's what, you know, there's no point coming here and saying, oh, you know, it's a bad year again. I think what we've had to adjust to now, it's always going to be a bad year, and we need to adjust for that. So.
Cool.
Are we, as members, going to be allowed to log on to Glendale Live?
At the minute, we've got a problem. It's been heightened by this data protection and GDPR that we're finding we've got to comply with by next year. We can provide it to a dedicated, so we would license it to. I think we would license it to Paul, who would sign an agreement that he would be the limit of that data protection. Because it's people's addresses, photographs of people's houses, potentially registration plates, this sort of thing. We can't allow open access to it.
But I can relay.
We can relay.
I can relay any
So
information
you'll have
you
it straight
request.
away, so when we ring up and
I can relay that information, which I haven't been able to do in the past. But that's not been, which is what I see as the major benefit of.
yeah, we're going forward, aren't we?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the data protection rules specifically are, because I know those members are allowed marked registers and things like that during elections. I want to understand the difference between the Glendale Live data and the data that we're given as elected members.
I don't know what data you have.
Okay.
We have responsibilities as an organisation to control the data flow into and out of it. As such, we have to have we have a licence agreement with our third party.
I mean, I don't know if it's something you've asked to be developed for a different council, but I don't know if there's a sort of perhaps more limited variant of the app that could be available to members that maybe circumvents some of the particular rules and just gives us some of the information we might find useful.
We've done, it's interesting, we did it 2 ways, because when we first opened it, through the same licence agreement, we allowed unlimited access to the client offices. There's an enormous amount of data there. And initially, the spike of interest, everyone logging in, checks is up here, and then within 4 weeks it's down again. And the review back to clients was, you're not looking at Glendale Live, you're not accessing the data that we're doing here. And the feedback was, yeah, it's just so much. Which is where the dashboards came from, where we do just condense down to whatever is regularly needed to be known and to be reported out.
Yeah.
In terms of data protection, I'm not au fait fully with it, but I'm aware that we're very heightened on it. I can't see us at the minute benefiting from allowing additional third parties within the same effective organisation access when we have a very
just when you said you modified the software for different councils, and know if there's anything that other councils have put in place that we might find useful here.
Phil, do you want to come in on that?
Well, I'm not entirely sure I follow the
Chair,
question.
can I just make a point, probably help Phil? I've been talking to Linda Downs, who is responsible for all of our audit work, and one of the points of our conversation was about the Data Protection Act. And I've suggested to Linda, and I know she was going to speak to Philip, about training within the new rules of the Data Protection Act, because they have changed considerably, Chair. I know it's not about this, it's just about the Data Protection Act. I'll talk to Philip. Sorry, I'd only just met Linda about half an hour ago.
Yeah, the good news, Chair, is that doesn't come in until May next year.
Right.
The new regulations, but GDPR is going to be quite onerous, and therefore, and more importantly, the powers of the Information Commissioner to institute hefty and significant fines is the real driver behind, I think, a lot of the sensitivities around it. So I think the reality is that systems are going to be closed down rather than opened up, I think is the way to view it, because all data controllers will want to have complete control or some measure of assurance about what's happening to the data that they're allowing people to access. So I can't imagine anything being sort of made widely available because you cannot control that data. I don't understand the reference to the electoral roll either, because that's obviously dealt with under very specific legislation. And of course that legislation actually says that information is controlled and therefore has to be returned at the end of the canvass period. So that's not going to change, that's going to get tighter as well.
Well, the way I see it anyway, this would give a lots of addresses out, and if you was a constant complainer, you might get a lot of barbecue.
Well, Chair, I'm finding it a bit odd that, you know, councillors want access to this, that and everything. If this is what they want, why don't they get a job at this council? Or because I'll be honest with you, I don't want to get up in the morning and look on some app, which I don't deal with anyway, but because I don't know half of what's going on when I look at an app. And to get into this sort of system, I'm not sure that's the job of a councillor. We've got people that are actually paid here, and if we don't think they're doing the job good enough, well, let's get on to them. But access to that, because the thing is, as I understand it, an app like that, well, it looks complicated to me. Now, there might be people around here that think they're wizards. I've heard all about wizards on computers. They get into that and they can pick up the wrong information and then start kicking off about it. And how much time does that take up with them then dealing with the councillors or whoever? I just personally, I don't want to get into that sort of thing. I think the system looks great if you know what you're doing with the system. I've not got a problem with any councillor that wants some information and comes in and deals with it in that way. But for somebody just, you know, to talk about having access to it, well, good luck to them. But I don't think that's our job. I'm a bit worried about the card returns and the satisfaction thing, because obviously some councillors around here are getting lots of complaints. Well, why are the cards not coming in to follow them or before them or whatever? Yeah, people do come to councillors before they come to council officers. Of course they do. I get that as well. But I'm bothered about even the low return of cards coming in. We do need, it's been mentioned about expanding the system. We certainly need to do that, because there are people that are unhappy. Now, the idea that, like Paul said, that sometimes you're getting a bit behind. You know what? If I told somebody the grass was going to be cut that they'd complained about on a Tuesday, and it actually got done on a Wednesday or a Thursday, I think they'd pat me on the back for sorting it out. They wouldn't say, "Whoa, you were wrong." So I'm not convinced about that. The other thing I do want to talk about, I actually come out my house to come to this meeting and thought, bloody hell, my grass needs cut again. Now, that's me. I'm not a great gardener, but I like to keep a tidy garden. But yeah, I did ask a few years ago, before it become, or worse if you like, in the growing, you know, when can you cut the grass? And one of the council officers, who doesn't work here now, gone in quite a few years, said, you cut it when it's long, and if it's not cold. Now, he said you can cut it on Christmas Day if you want. Yeah. But my point is, Well, I think I've made the point. And I think the other thing is, I'm going to comment on it. Anybody who's got information that can be helpful to the council, even if they're a councillor, please speak to the councillor officers and not at meetings, I would say.
Steph?
Yes, I'm glad that Councillor Copland raised the issue with the cards and the returns. I think I asked a few OSPs ago if the members here could have a look at what's been designed and what's being put through doors, because it's possible that the poor rate of returns could be down to just a poorly designed artwork. Because if something's difficult or too complicated to return, people tend not to do it. But if it's just simple, you know, send it off, that it's free post, you don't have to put in much information, but it might be easier.
Fair point, Councillor.
We can do that.
We can
yeah.
do that.
We can do
That's a very fair point, and you did raise that.
Yeah.
You did raise that, and to be fair, I have kind of sidelined that, but that's something we will pick up.
Okay. Is it possible for members to be emailed with the...
I can certainly send to members of the OSP. I can send out what we send out, so you can comment on it. Any improvements are...
Just thinking it's always good to have a second or, well, 6th or 7th pair buys.
I think it's a very good idea. I think it's a very good idea.
Okay. Right. Paul, you sent about 89 rectifications.
Yeah.
Is that so far? Because then you said could be 100 per month.
No.
So that confused me a little bit.
No. So if I confuse you, that's 89. It's 89 between April and September. We've issued 89 during that period of time. Sorry, I should have made this clear. What the contract, the word allow is the wrong word really. What
states.
Yeah, what it states. Thank you, Phil. What it states is that we can issue to the contractor 100 defaults. They wouldn't be sitting here if we were at default. 100 rectifications per calendar month before they run into a breach of contract. Obviously, we would, if they were running up to 60, 70 rectifications in a particular calendar month, the wheels would have fallen off. And I think we'd be beating a path to the door of, and I think members would be asking serious questions if that was the case. Yeah. So that is a reflection, I believe, of the standard 39 in June. It does reflect where the problems that were encountered at that particular time, and with the resources we've got available to us. If we had six of the guys out there, probably we'd be issuing potentially more. Yeah. We may not, but potentially we would. But that's using all the eyes from the housing service. We've got all you have their assistants. They pass messages into us. We've also got members, so we tailor our resources around the kind of information we get from yourself, Chair. So but that's how we tailor our efforts.
Okay. Right, brilliant. Actually, after some of some of the questions, most of them might have been answered really. Mine was on the customer satisfaction cards because I've never seen one. But I thought that we'd done some work with customer services where there was going to use something like that. On the customer satisfaction, we were going to do a smiley face, happy face, and sad face. I thought it was. Scheduling of jobs, I was going to ask if it went red, and said it did. So, and so with the answer then, a Glendale employee would be able to go out on estate walks or with the council or whatever and take photos, put them on there. Or if anybody sends them to Paul, he'll be able to send them to you, you'll be able to schedule them on there. So, yeah, got that right? No, to see something like that coming in then, I think. Pictures, as you say, speak 1,000 words. So yeah, I'm pleased to see that coming in. So I'm pleased to see the improvements that you're putting in. And the other one was on staffing, because I know that the staffing did let you down this year, and you've already answered that you'll be staffing up earlier. So looks like you're all set to go for next year. So when does this live go live?
It's across 4 teams now. I think we've got, is it 12 teams, 15 teams?
Yeah, what we're doing to get the glitches out, and obviously for some of our staff it's quite a big jump for what they're used to. So we're rolling out across sort of the bin rounds and bits and pieces at the moment. So the fully by sort of January, February next year, it's fully ready to go. So when we start grass cutting, all the teams will be out running with it. We've got all the sort of the hardware in place, all the handsets are here. So it's just a lot of guys are quite scared, and it's just breaking it in gently through the winter, and obviously also to make sure we've got the right information in place. So there's a lot of toing and froing between my guys and Ben's team to make sure the information's right. So,
spring next year.
Yeah, fully operational in spring, definitely, yeah.
Well, thanks for the presentation, and look forward to the improvements.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Just we don't want to stay for a couple of hours. Right, integrated performance report.
Thank you.
That's right. Right, how do you want to do the integrated performance report? Do you want to do it page by page, or do you want to...
Do you want me to talk through it?
Do you want to go through the...
Yeah, it's and obviously we'll stop on each page as we go, in case members have any specific questions that they wish to ask. Obviously I'm starting, I will just make one point, Chair, on page 16, which is paragraph 4 there, Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, just so that, and to flag, because it's not something that we highlight very often, but it is worth noting that there has been no covert surveillance undertaken under that Act since the last report. And in fact, I'm trying to remember the last time we actually did any covert surveillance, and certainly it's not since the changes that were enacted about 5 years ago, which require us to go to the Magistrates' Court to get an order before we can do it. But I flagged that, Chair, because the Office of the Surveillance Commissioner, who comes every 2 to 3 years to inspect us, expects you as an overview and scrutiny panel to have oversight of this and to ensure that when we do it properly. So on that one, we haven't done any, well, as far as we know, we haven't done any, and therefore I'm just bringing that to your attention.
Yeah, that's it. That's the bit that I wanted to speak on the first part of the Jan, without going into all the reports, on the RIPA stuff. Now, on one sense, you look at that and you think, well, we've not used that. Great. You know, we've not had any. But I actually view it slightly differently. Now, I don't know whether this is a possibility or whatever, or what we can use it for. So I would like maybe an explanation about, maybe an example. Now, the reason I'm raising it is because sometimes when there's a massive, or not massive, but a lot of, say, fly tipping somewhere, anywhere, you know, within the borough, I do see it where people are requesting about a camera up to catch, because these things cost one hell of a lot of money. Now, I don't know whether that's an example of where it could be used, but while the public wouldn't want us to be snooping on whatever things, there are things that I think the public would like us to snoop on. I'm using the word snoop because I've actually had people mention that to me about fly tipping. When a camera just go up. So I don't know if it's appropriate under this, but what my point is, it's in one way great we've not had to use it, but maybe in another way it's a bit sad that maybe we're not allowed to use it for certain things.
I'm going to deal with that in two parts, then I'm going to perhaps ask Sue to comment, because the last time that we nearly used it was in fact in connection with a potential fly tipping case, and Sue was the person that was looking to use it. The first thing is we're not alone in terms of Reaper and the if you like, the lack of use of Reaper. The changes that were wrought, as I say, about 5 years ago, have restricted when we can use it, and it is now limited to those cases where there is a penalty of at least, I think it's 6 months imprisonment as the minimum threshold for using it. So you can't use it for certain offences where, for example, it's just a fine. And you can't use it for antisocial behaviour anymore, unless, of course, it's a criminal act. The answer to the question, can we use it? The answer is yes, we can. However, the other policy consideration, and I'm sure Brent will bear this out as well, because we have been trained as authorising officers under the Act to authorise applications for Reaper before they go to the Magistrates' Court, but that the overriding consideration before you even consider it is, can you get this information by other means which are more proportionate and reasonable and do not require covert surveillance? And if you can, then the expectation is, and the Office of Surveillance Commissioner is very keen on this, you use that method, you don't go down the covert route. If you can't, you still then have to apply a proportionality test as to whether in fact it is reasonable to undertake that form of surveillance in those circumstances to get some information, because the information you get might be far more intrusive than is necessary to achieve your objective. And in those circumstances, there is a requirement either to not do it because it's overly intrusive, or to try and mitigate it in some way so that you don't. So there's a lot of policy considerations that come into play before you even consider going off to the Magistrates' Court, who will then ask all the questions that I've just mentioned around, is this proportionate, can it be mitigated, can you get this information via some other means? So it's quite a high bar you have to get over before you can actually use it. And I mention that because I think enforcement officers, if they when they come along and want to use this, and they're then told, well, can you do a plan? Can you demonstrate that this is proportionate? Can you demonstrate this? Can you do that? Can you do that? By the time they've finished going around the Wrekin, they, I think, have come to the conclusion it's not worth it. I'll go a different route. Having said that, if you had a significant case with significant problems on a regular basis, and there was no other way of preventing or trying to capture the evidence to be able to capture or to prosecute the perpetrator, then the answer is yes, you can, but you are up there in terms of severity of case to justify it. And I don't know whether at this point, I'm going to hand over to Sue just to say whether, in your view, it would be justified, and when, what circumstances.
We before this legislation came in, we did, it was probably about 9 years ago now, that we did actually do a covert surveillance on a particular area in Astley Lane. We didn't actually do that, it was actually through the Environment Agency and Warwickshire County Council. It was sort of like a team effort. A lot of resources and cost went into that project. And I seem to remember that it lasted about 2 to 3 weeks, the actual covert surveillance. Nothing was actually found, and that was a hotspot for many, many years. As soon as that covert surveillance finished, we started getting fly tipped again. So it completely depends, all that time and resource and cost going into a covert surveillance doesn't necessarily get you the evidence that you need anyway. In that particular case, we did look at different ways of stopping the fly tipping, and eventually worked with the landowner to block the area off. But yeah, I'm in agreement with Philip that all necessary areas need to be looked at. It's time, resources, costs as well. And if we can stop that fly tip in another way, then we will do that as well.
Thanks, yeah.
Joe?
Yeah, thanks, yeah. Just to follow up on that, is that we're talking about covert here on behalf of the council, but I had an example where I reported some fly tipping as an individual. And I took photographs, etc. Ashley Lane's been just mentioned, which was in Ashley Lane, and lo and behold, the guy was working for the council. But at least I reported it, because there wasn't a sign up saying Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council. It was either a guy putting things into the back of a van or taking them out when I see them.
Collecting stuff on site.
Yeah,
he was taking them away.
Yeah, so he's actually taking them away. But that's
collecting the flies.
It's okay.
As I say,
He was collecting the fly tipping.
so I was actually doing my civic duty as a private individual to tell, and the guy actually said, so I phoned up the council, well, why don't you put a sign up saying collecting on behalf of the Nuneaton Bedworth Borough Council? So, because I never knew this guy from Adam, and the van wasn't marked or anything. So I presume that apart from the county council procedures, etc., there's still individuals like my good self. If it had been somebody else who was actually fly tipping, I would have to go to court and say, well, I've seen this guy or this lassie, and give the photographs to it. But as long as people know that that's a system, without going into the peering behind Craig to make sure you're putting the right stuff in the green bin and all this sort of nonsense. That was what went on once upon a time. But as long as we know that the public can actually still turn around and do it, even if they just take a photograph and just move away.
Absolutely.
You know, it's something that can be done, but not we as a local authority. We wouldn't use the covert sign in order to do that unless it's with consultation with the county council.
Yeah, just to be clear, Chair, if a council officer or a councillor or a member of the public happens to see an offence being committed, there is nothing wrong with taking a number plate and reporting it to the police, taking a photograph even, or identifying the person that they see. That's not covert surveillance. That's just catching somebody red-handed, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the legislation recognises that. So, but it does then necessitate them being a witness in any subsequent court proceedings, and that's absolutely the norm, you know, as you would expect in any other criminal.
So just more model. A lot of the dash cams are now being used on motorways and things like that as evidence, and I know that there was or still is cameras fitted to dust cars, things like that. Could they still be used in evidence, or would that be considered covert?
I think it would be difficult to say, depending on what the circumstances are. If it was a road traffic incident involving a vehicle, then obviously in a civil sense it would be evidence of the collision, how it was caused. If our vehicle was driving along the road and we happened to capture somebody fly tipping on the side of the road, and the camera took a photograph, I don't know off the top of my head. Part of me says, well, that's just luck. And we didn't go out of our way. It wasn't part of an operation, because one of the issues in terms of Ripper is if you're setting a camera up specifically at a hotspot, it's an operation. You're going out deliberately to capture evidence, and therefore Ripper immediately is triggered. If you're driving along the road and happen to capture something, arguably, because it wasn't intended to do that, then that information could be passed on and used as evidence. But I guess the follow-on question from that is, if we then say, well, let's attach cameras to everything and go driving around looking for this, I think you're then into, actually now you're turning it into an operation again. So you've got to be very careful, and it's a fine line. So to take, and just to expand on John's point, if one thing we're not allowed to do as a council is commission individuals to go out and obtain evidence, because that potentially turns them into what they call a covert human intelligence source. So if we said to John, if you see somebody fly tipping, John, go and have a chat with them, find out who they are, where they're from, then come and tell us. requires authorisation. And I can tell you that the rules and requirements on CHIS are even higher than on covert surveillance. So we have to be very careful about ensuring that we're not tasking people or members of the public to do things. By all means, if the public see something and report it, that's one thing. Asking them to go off and then do more observations and things, that we're not allowed to do.
Yeah, okay. Right.
Should we move on to the report proper now, Chair?
Is everybody happy with the explanation on it?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes, I'm very grateful to Councillor Cochran for that question, Chair. If we start on page 17, Chair, you've got the, if you like, the dashboard chart there. I'll just highlight a couple of things. Obviously, the top left-hand chart, you will see there is a budget, 17-18 budget of 8 million. And you'll see that there is a forecast outturn, and this is a projection going forward. So as of this point, we're projecting a £28,000 overspend on that £8 million budget, and that's based on lifetime recording of where we think we will be at the end of the year at this point in time. So as you might expect, where we can, we will be looking to reduce the overspends, but in some cases that will be inescapable circumstances that have led to that, and it means that we will have to look at the overall budget at the end of the year. But our financial procedure rules do say if we're over budget, we need to work with our portfolio holders to try and mitigate that where we can. The only other thing... Oh, sorry, Jamie.
The budget seems to have gone up £500,000. We keep getting told we've got less money. Is that purely an accountancy thing, why the budget's 8 million rather than 7.5 million from last year? Or is it a real increase in expenditure? Because I know sometimes accountancy rules change and we have we depreciate things differently, so it's a fictitious increase. But if the budget has gone up £500,000, that's quite a...
Brent and I are both looking at the outturn and the current budget to spot the difference. I don't know the answer to that. There are differences between the outturn and the budget. I suppose one explanation, Chair, and I can't put my hand on my heart to say this is absolutely right, but I don't know, that's the outturn figure, that's not the budgeted figure, if I understand that correctly. So I don't know whether we actually came in under budget last year or not. But
as a whole we did.
But if we did, for the basket of services caught by this
is that for something for Simone to answer then?
Yeah.
Could
you ask, put simply, Chair, yes.
Can you ask Simone to get back to us on that then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But that, as I say, that is the outturn rather than the budgeted figure, so we don't know what the budget was for last year.
Okay, no worries.
And I guess, Chair, the only other thing I was going to say is that obviously in terms of performance indicators, the only other thing to note is that you have 3 indicators that have improved, but 6 have declined. So, and there'll be frowns in the report when we come to them. So we'll, when we get into the detail of the report, we'll be able to look at those in a bit more detail. If you turn to page 18, Chair, you'll see the breakdown of the budget and the forecast variance. And I'm going to particularly focus on the right-hand column, the forecast variance, because it's in those areas where we have the 28,000 features. That's how it's derived. And it's not all bad news, so I'll just flag the fact that there is for example, in development control, planning income is up by, over budget by, or income is up by £74,000. We've also got environmental protection where there are explanations later on. That's also under budget by 13,000, and planning policy is under budget by 13,000. There's obviously some areas where we're overspent or projecting an overspend. One of those is parks. There's an £8,000 variance there, and I think that principally that's cemetery.
It's under recovery on cemetery income.
And we'll come back to that. And obviously you have got a figure for refuse and street cleansing of £82,000, which I know Brent's going to deal with when we get to it in the reports. But with the pluses and minuses, if you take all of those into account, it should add up to 28, and that's how that is derived. So, Chair, if I suggest if we start. It's funny we say sports income there.
It's predominantly cemetery income.
On page 20, Chair, first frown, obviously is the £8,000 under recovery. It is, although sports income is down, and it is down, the reality is that the vast majority of the under recovery is in cemeteries, and that is partly down to, I think we've identified an accountancy error when setting the budget, which we're talking to the accountants about, which accounts for some of the overspend. I think the overspend is roughly about 20,000 projected, but we think 10 of that is because we overinflated the anticipated income because of changes that we knew were going to happen with cemeteries, and we think it was double counted, so it was done twice rather than just once. But we'll talk to the accountants, so I'll be able to tell you more about that next time. But there is an under recovery of about £10,000 on cemetery income. That is largely down to the fact that we're just not getting the. People are living longer. It's a good news. Every time I come to this panel, I do say this. It is a good news story. People are living longer, and that means that we're not processing as many customer requests as we would otherwise have done.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, people aren't living longer anymore. The improvements slowed down, and we've got more actually over 65s than over 85s. The number of people dying in Nuneaton is still 1,200 a year. So it's probably that they're not getting buried is the issue.
Oh, well,
not that they're not dying.
Which I have to say is surprising, because when we will be doing some work on cemeteries income sometime during the course of next year, and one of the things that we've identified through some benchmarking is that we are incredibly good value for money as a place to be buried. So
that's the way to sell the borough. Come and die here. Right, okay, should we move on?
We've talked about satisfaction, and I think there is an issue in terms of that, and you've heard what we're proposing to do with customer services to try and increase that. One of the things we did talk about, and I think this panel did agree to, we haven't implemented it yet, was to also look at implementing some form of web-based facility, so that when people are, if people are going to, if they come on to complain, or give compliments or make an inquiry, they'll have the opportunity to rate the service at the same time. So we haven't, our IT people have been, obviously, as you can understand, quite busy, so we've not progressed that with them yet.
I'm sure that when we've done that working group, that we suggested something like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
That's what I think you were talking about.
I'm sure we did. Yeah. Okay.
I'm just going to say we're on car parks yet.
I'm just moving on to page. Well, all I was going to, well, in terms of page 21, Chair, obviously you have got reduced car park income forecast for the year, partly offset by vacancy savings, and it's a smiley.
Okay.
It is wrong.
Yes.
It is wrong.
Yes, I have made inquiries about that, Chair, and that the smiley face on the car park is wrong.
It should be down.
It should be, yes.
Because looking at the graph, it's just going down and down and down. And reported to Cabinet, we're £44,000 below what we were expecting, and we weren't expecting much anyway.
I was going to move on.
Well, except the £2 million quid's quite a lot in my book, but I suppose not much. So I'd say.
June?
How much of those figures are offset by some of the free parking that has been put on of an evening?
There will definitely be some there. So in previous years, of course, you did have to pay all the time. So there will be some that is offset, particularly, for example, the Civic Hall, and it shows there how that counts. So there will be some there that is as a result of free parking. Well, in fact,
Is it possible to have that figure, Brent? If it isn't, then it isn't. But
No, because
Okay.
after 6 p.m. you don't have to buy a ticket, so
okay, fine.
so you don't know.
We've lost.
You don't, yeah.
But also there's something with the mobile phone. We couldn't record that data, could we, or something?
We can get that, but to be honest, that's not really very well
Right.
utilised because it does actually. It's that app type parking tends to be most used by business people because they're going to reclaim those rents because it costs you 20p more than it does if you put the cash in. So if you claim your expenses, you're not fussed, are you? Really, it's quite, and it's easy to claim expenses because you'll get it'll produce you a spreadsheet you submit to your, whoever it is. But if you're paying, if you're a normal person paying out your own pocket, most people will pay as little as they can, which is not paying an extra 20 pence on your phone. But we can get that, but it's very small fish.
Yeah, that's okay.
Just going back on the point that June made, there was a very clear drop because we allowed free parking, which I think is a good thing in the evenings, but that was more than a year ago now. So the reduction in income between 16, 17 and 17, 18 has gone out of the statistics because this time last year it was free parking in the evenings.
I should have known that Keith had got the answer before I asked Brent.
I'm sure them figures will equal out next year because we'll have a better target to the budget for it. Should we move over?
Are you happy to carry on, Chair?
22, yeah?
We've touched on 22 anyway. We've done that, and obviously you do have a frowny face there, but we've dealt with that. So 23, it brings us to processing planning applications. You'll see that there is a frowny face at the bottom of 23, a slight deterioration in the time spent processing planning applications. So we've gone from 62.82 days to 64.22 days.
Can I just add a bit extra to that on behalf of Ian? Pale by explanation. That's because we've got more major decisions to make. So you have, I'm reliably informed by this piece of paper, a 13-week target for major decisions and an 8-week target for minor decisions, i.e. 91 days as opposed to 56 days. So the more ones you're aiming for 91 days you've got in your basket of stuff, the bigger your average will be. So that's not necessarily an indication of poor performance, it's an indication of what you're having to deal with.
Market force.
Okay.
Just one point on that though, we have a few really big applications in the Wellington area which haven't been determined after a year. And of course, because they haven't yet been determined, they probably don't show in these stats. So it's like there are voids in housing. Until we actually rent a void that's been empty for 10 years, it doesn't go on the stats that it's been 10 years waiting to be rented. These applications on Heim Lane and I think there's one on Canada Farm, they've been going over a year now and they aren't included yet, I assume, because they haven't yet been determined.
I think that's correct, yeah. I don't think they get in the stats until they've been determined.
I think it's still reaches a percentage of built, ain't it, or something? Yeah, I think.
I don't know whether it's when the decision notice is issued or whether it's...
Well, I think the point that Councillor Conacher was making is you can't measure something until you know what the start and end point is. You've got no end point, you can't measure from the start point.
Okay, should we move over?
Yes, Chair. If you move to page 24, we have percentage of people in employment. and you'll see that there is a negative trend there. Again, deterioration slightly. So from 94.25% to 94.12%.
Chair.
Okay.
2 points on that page. ERDF is not explained, and actually underspending on economic development isn't always a good thing because we need economic development. And the second thing is these stats at the bottom with 94.25 and 94.1, they're done on business surveys of how people work, and so they're incredibly unreliable. We've suddenly gained on these stats about 8,000 extra workers in the Nuneaton and Bedworth, which is totally fictitious. Yeah, that they're very small surveys. They might only count 20 people. So for the next year you count 23 people, suddenly your divider is up and down. So I don't think you can read anything in such minuscule changes.
Well, I did ask some questions about this before we got here. What was the answer, Shirley, from Chris? Right. Yeah, well, you know, yeah. Well, it,
Might be able to.
that's what we get. The answers basically are because it does come from different, the different things that you look at to find out where your employments are. But
Because I believe you heard that you saw something from the MP, didn't you?
because this is about Nuneaton and Bedworth, and the ones that somebody was going on about was on about Nuneaton and said that the employment is off. So it depends on what you look at. So it is all dependent on what surveys you look at, to be honest. Right, should we move on to the next?
Yes, Chair, if you go to page 25, you'll see there is in environmental protection, and there is a response to service requests, and there is a 1% deterioration between 16, 17, 17, 18. So it's as I say, yes. I mean, the target is 90%, and we're running at 95%. So.
Is the air quality stuff in environmental protection, air quality monitoring, is that in that total of £573,000 budget?
I'm guessing that that is the entire service, so it would include air quality.
So if I may, Chair, that underspend includes closing down the air quality monitoring station and doing less monitoring tubes.
I'm not really sure, because I was under the impression that had been offered up as a saving last year. So it would have been taken out of the base budget, so it's not, I wouldn't think it was included now.
It'll be taken from the £573,000 budget in the first place.
That 5,000 or whatever from last year, so that's not in this, is it?
Okay.
Okay, next.
We're coming to food establishments, and on page 26 we have again a 2% shift in terms of premises that are rating 3, 4 or 5. So we've had some premises that moved below 3 in the National Food Standards Agency rating system to say that they are no longer, I think it's good, I think 3 is good, so I think they've moved to satisfactory or something. I think
Satisfactory, no. 3 satisfactory, 4 is good, 5 is very good.
So
2 is
poor,
unsatisfactory, and 1 is.
I think we've got some in 1, haven't we? From what I've seen, we're the best. So is there anything happening on that?
Well, obviously the teams will work with proprietors, but ultimately, unless it's an issue which gives serious cause for concern in terms of health, it's for the proprietor. The whole point of this system is to encourage proprietors to have a high rating, to encourage, because it's assurance to the customer that it's a safe place to eat.
So do we do any enforcement on that?
Well, the rating itself doesn't necessarily trigger enforcement. It'll be whether or not there are actually infringements of the food safety legislation itself, which would trigger an enforcement. But I would imagine that if there were, then yes, there would be enforcement taken.
Yeah, I've got it, yeah.
Is Ian?
Yeah, Ian just made the point there's a degree of variation of businesses closed and new ones open and people getting up to speed with what they need to do. But essentially the rating part is but it's a bit, it's not quite like, I mean, Michelin stars, but it's basically saying if you're going to eat somewhere, you're going to eat with the ones with more stars rather than less stars. But if environmental health officers find anything that's dangerous there, or as Phil says, contravenes the food safety regulations, then they enforce or they close it down. So this is about enabling customer choice, really, about going eating the most.
User.
Yeah.
People do.
And do we put as like a star system on the window for them?
Yeah, they display, yeah.
In point of fact, Chair, at the moment it's not mandatory that they have to display. They have to have one, but they don't have to display it. But one of the proposals that are before government at the moment is to actually make it mandatory that they have to put it there so that the customer can see.
And most people would think all those other food places have got 4 and 5 stars on them. Why haven't you got any stars on your window? Well,
Yes.
the reason for that, I'm not going to go in there.
Yeah. Alright, move on.
Top of page 28, Chair, into refuse and cleansing.
So it's 27 now, have we?
Well, those smileys, Chair. I'm doing this by, I'm doing this by exception, assuming the smileys are right, of course.
On that page 27.
Well, on the planning policy, we've got 390 budget. We've only spent 143 by half year. So obviously more than half the spending is in the second half of the year on that. Because obviously trending, you'd expect, so we're actually massively underspent in the first half of the year. And does that imply we've got a lot of expenditure during the second half of the year for the inquiry? Because otherwise I don't know how we're going to spend £377,000. Unless we're hiring a barrister for the whole of the hearing process for all 3 weeks.
Well, I don't know the answer to the question, Chair. I don't know whether Ian's made any comment on that.
No, because it's a smiley face, but the budget will be profiled across the 12 months to spend and how it's expected to profile. So the answer is yes, it will be expected that proportionally more will be spent in the second 6 months than the first 6 months. Hence the forecast outturn of 377 as opposed to a forecast outturn of 286, which would just double the first 6 months.
So the questions to be asked on that will be at the next one of these. Really.
Yeah. What's the profile and why is it
Watch your space.
not completely even 1/12 for each month?
So I think that's one for you to watch, Keith.
And I don't know, Chair, what that shared service is in planning policy, but the only shared service element I'm aware of is the conservation officer who we used to share with North Warwickshire. So if it's that, then obviously that would be that might equate to the difference, the profile difference between the budget and the forecast outcome.
Okay. 28.
So yes, top of 28 Chair, I'm going to hand over to Brent. This is refuse and cleansing, and you'll see there's a frown.
Yes. So by far and away, the two biggest bits are increased cost for fly tipping, which is a national trend. You've probably seen TV programmes about that. And then it's increased salary and agency cover costs, and that is by far and away that's sickness absence for refuse collection drivers. Where we have to have someone to drive the trucks to send them out there. And that's just because we now don't carry any slack in the system in terms of having extra people there just in case when we do have illnesses. And unfortunately, we've had a number of drivers who've had quite significant illnesses. We have to bring in agency cover for those occasions. As to whether we'll get that back on track from the forecast, I mean, I have to say, if it's a very big if there's no sickness between now and the end of the year, we'll bring it back on track. I don't think that's going to happen myself. But yeah, that's the key. Now, in terms of mitigating against that, we are we're more than halfway actually through training for waste operatives to be HGV drivers. So 2 of them are now trained and have passed their tests, so they can drive the trucks, and the other 2 are taking their practical tests end of this month, I think it is. So the beauty of that is that if we do have to cover drivers or sort of full-time drivers, that's all they do. We can bring those guys in and put them in the cab. So if we have to backfill, it's cheaper to have someone behind the truck than it is behind the wheel of the truck. And it also gives us the opportunity to if we need to, go light on a street cleansing crew. And admittedly that means there won't be as much cleansing done, but you can go light on a street cleansing too and sort of get away with it for a day or 2. You can't get away with having one refuse collector at the back of the truck because you won't finish your own. So that's the sort of and that's been well received, and in fact was a suggestion from the workforce which we put into place, and it's working really well as a way of trying not in that situation again.
Yeah. Keith?
On the move to Gresham Road, that obviously was going to bring you some cost savings and some additional costs as well. Is that starting to have a positive or negative impact on the figures, i.e. this part of the year you're now getting the impact of having the new depot location?
It factors in on the revised budget. So the simple answer is yes, because the overall depot running costs get split up into who occupies it. So the lower costs feed into the cost centres. So the simple answer is yes.
Okay. Actually, I've seen a new sweeper out the other day around town.
Yeah.
Hoover thing.
Hoover, yeah, the little, like the great big Henry that we got.
Yeah, it's quite good. Okay, next.
On to recycling, page 3.
Yeah, so we're yeah, well, it sort of explains where we are with that. We've got reduced recycling credits. So at the present time, we still make a little titty-witty bit of a profit on each ton we collect. So if we don't collect as many tons, we don't make quite as much profit on that. No other council in Warwickshire makes profit on that, but we do. And then the other one that's is a bit frustrating from a line management perspective as opposed to a accountancy perspective. Is we are showing an overspend because we've backfilled Sue's normal job to allow Sue to do the contract work, and we're using an earmark reserve to do that, but it doesn't show against the original budget, so we bring it in, as the accountants say, under the line. So that is it's a planned, so that in one sense you can see is a planned overspend that is being resourced from elsewhere. So that's the thing there.
Just for me on that, reduced recycling credit, that is taking into account the money that was going off the clothes and book banks. Because I know that Katie's done some work on it. So that is.
So all recycling from banks and curbside.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. But even that's down. So.
I think sorry, Chad, I think with clothes banks is that when people take and get £5 a bag for the they take and get £5 a big bag of clothes and and they also see people. Well, to be fair, I've not seen it in Nuneaton, but I have seen it in Kent where they've had people dangling kids inside the things to get the clothes out.
But the one thing this did.
So they don't put them up chimneys anymore. They dangle them into clothes recycling.
One thing this did help us do is cut back on the illegal one, the unauthorised one, I should say. Yes, Kate.
We talked earlier about the extra green waste and more grass growing this year. Obviously this figure's recycling and composting. Has that ratio changed much, or have we seen more green and less?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and that's in fact, well, it's a trend across Warwickshire as a whole that the organic waste has increased because it's grown more. But we have seen that, yeah.
So using the green bin longer.
They're fuller, so people are when they put them out, because most people put them out once a fortnight, and as well in there. So they present once a fortnight, but when they present them, they're fuller and heavier.
Our composting rate's actually higher than our recycling rate currently.
Thanks. And that covers the performance report per se, Chair. If you turn to the risk register, obviously, I'm not going to go through all of this. I just wanted to highlight one or two. I think the first one, R2, which obviously was our highest risk. I just wanted to make a couple of observations on that. Obviously, we are now moving into the second stage examination, which will be, from memory, the end of February, early March. So we will be updating the plan to reflect that. I was just having a quick look at our how we'd assess this in terms of the net risk status, and given the Secretary of State's intervention with 15 authorities last week, I think we're probably well advised to crack on with the borough plan when we did, because otherwise I'm fairly certain we would be put on the naughty step. So I think we're moving in the right direction as far as R2 is concerned, and we might well now be able to look at the net risk status in the light of what's happened and where we are. So that might come down a little bit when we do what we have to do. All I have to say is until we've got the plan adopted, we can never be absolutely certain, and clearly there is always that risk of legal challenge at the end of the whole process, as Warwick District are finding out. So it's something that we just have to keep an eye on.
Keith?
Yeah, obviously I'm one of the people attending the hearings, and me and Sam and quite a few other people have quite a few issues over the borough plan. And it's clear you've taken it forward to the inspector to avoid being on the naughty step, but obviously the risk is then the plan fails and you go back to square one. And the council doesn't seem to have taken account of the changes in the economic circumstances and the challenges to Warwick and Coventry, which actually have far more economic growth than Nuneaton and Bedworth, in actually having a realistic plan. And the way we've taken on more housing, the plan just seems, 15,000 now you're talking about.
Keith, we can't prejudge the outcome.
I know we can't prejudge, but in terms of the risk register, the risks can't be downgraded till we know what's happened. And the question I asked earlier is, are we going to have a barrister representing us for the whole period, and actually, or are we doing it on a shoestring?
No decisions have been taken, Chair, but we will obviously review the position and take the best course for the council, whatever that is.
Find out what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Chair, it's an operational decision whether we use council or not, and it's something that we obviously take great care with because of our fiduciary responsibilities, but clearly, certainly some aspects of this I would expect we would be inviting council to represent the council on some. And the other bits we won't need council for, I'm sure.
A comment was made, obviously we have taken it to the inspector because we didn't want to be on the naughty step. Not true. The plan has gone forward. Okay, there's whatever criticism, but that plan went forward because it was ready, not to avoid the naughty step. The member has also stated that he's been at the planning inquiry, so have others in this room. And we'll await what happens. Some people just seem to be disappointed that we're through to stage 2.
Okay, can we move on, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Probably the other one that I just wanted to flag was R4, which is on page 37, and that's to do with our vibrancy of our town centres. It kind of links a little bit with some of the discussion members have been having around car parking income and other things. Clearly, there are plans in place to look at bringing forward Vicarage Street and Abbey Street as quickly as we can. I don't, not entirely sure we've captured the. Yes, we have. We have got the £7.5 million LEP funding, and I understand that we are very close to progressing with the county council, who are the custodians of that money, as to how that money is to be spent. But obviously that will need to follow through a normal decision-making process and procedure when we finally get to that. But that will then, I think, impact on this particular risk, and we'll then need to do an update on that as well. But obviously we are, Ian Powell and his team and others are keeping a close eye on R4, because it is important to us, it's important to Brent, because if we can get Vicarage Street and Abbey Street sorted, it'll be something that will then increase the vitality of our town centres and bring hopefully more people in, and hopefully we'll have car parking spaces for them to park.
So everything there is still going ahead then on the existing and ongoing?
Yes, as far as I know, Chair, we are. I know there was a question around the budget to improve town centres, and I think an answer was given to that. Yes, and I do know. I've been specifically talking and working with Jonathan White in terms of the Wi-Fi, getting that up and running, and I think I'm in the process of implementing that. So that should be live and running, I hope, soon. I mean, obviously we're still getting all the licences in place with all the property owners, etc.
Keith?
One of the things that had cross-party support was getting people into the town centres in terms of living, and there was a project, I believe, called Bridge to Living or something, which got LEP money to get people living above flats, and that seems to have died and the funding has been withdrawn. So I don't know if that's something we can have an explanation for.
I don't know anything about it. No, we're not in a position to answer that, Chair. I mean, what we can say is we're doing our bit. We're bringing forward the council house, so we're doing our bit. There's a prospect of accommodation on Church Street, so we're doing where we can. We're doing that, but and as you know, there is a development going on in the Warwick House. Was it?
Yes, Warwick House.
So it's things are happening, but of course it's obviously led by either us using our resources or it's where the market will deliver it. And obviously, in some cases, the market won't deliver it. But I don't know specifically why that project hasn't gone ahead. I just don't know.
Right, so that's all you wanted to bring up?
Yes, Chair.
Is everybody happy with these? Good, so that seems great. Going on to 43 then. Trends. Do you want to say anything about that?
Not specifically, Chair. I mean, the revenue forecast out, we I think has already been reported to members before. But I mean, obviously, 22 Queen's Road is a significant factor that's impacting on that. And obviously steps are being taken to try and mitigate that. But beyond that, I don't think there's any significant issues that have been identified beyond the obvious ones around sort of operational budgets, in some cases being overspent or under recovery of income. I can't comment really on the sundry debt collection, but looking at the results, it's actually the profile target, we're actually ahead of target. Although it shows a down arrow, the reality is we're ahead of profile. So
just because we're less ahead of profile
than we were
the month before, which is why the trend's there, but we're still ahead of profile.
So it's kind of shooting yourself in the foot the way we do it, but we're still ahead of where we thought we would be. And obviously rent collection, I know there have been issues in terms of getting rent in. Some of that will be down to welfare reform, and the message I'm getting from Dawn, I don't know whether Brent can elaborate on this, but that it's not going to get any easier.
But we are anticipating getting a lot worse before it starts to get any better.
Okay.
Just a quick one on the business rate collection. Is that relative to what we expected to collect, or what we will end up being collected? Because like if the leaks close or some other shop closed and then they are empty and we have less business rates, does that is it profiled against what we're supposed to get, or what we then, you understand?
Yeah, yes, and if you look at the good performance, 100% is what we hope to get. That's good performance, between 98 and 100%. We will have profiled this for the year, so that's the profile that we would expect to be getting, somewhere between 48 and 50% by now.
Okay.
Over the page, Chair, we've dealt with percentage of total waste recycled and composted, so I don't, but again, just to observe, and I think it's worth making, it's a downward arrow trend, but ahead of profile target. So we're still ahead of target. So it's worth just flagging that, so that the glass is half empty, half full. Sorry, half full. Sorry, I'll get it right. Clearly, the position on sickness absence, you'll see there's a downward trend. But from memory, I think the last time we looked at this, in fact, our performance was improving.
Yes, so at the present time, after 5 months, we're absolutely bang on target to get 6.5 days if sickness is a straight line, 1/12 of sickness incurred every month. But we're a bit ahead of target last month, and now we're moving more towards the target. So that's what the downward arrows there is.
Yeah.
Less good.
That's
not quite as
more or
bad.
less on short-term sicknesses.
Yeah.
Yes, because as you'll see, Chair, the long-term sickness absence is much better. The personal development reviews are running at 76%. That in part is, in some cases, we're in a process of moving things around a little bit. I think that's led to some lag in doing some in some areas. So I think
So that will improve by next time.
Yes.
should do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the intention.
We're on the time after next. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it in that in all of that, Chair, we are then moving on to FOI requests. I don't propose to go through all of those. Just to say, however, Chris Tylerman did catch me just as she was walking out the door. We have now implemented the new system from the 1st of September, I think she said. And therefore, this spans that period. So we now automatically acknowledge all FOIs and complaints from the 1st of September within the 10 working days. It's done automatically. As I'm told, I haven't proved this to you, but I am told that overall our performance in responding is getting better.
Yeah.
And that's down to the new system and the fact that the new system is much more readily, it's got a much better user interface, which makes it easier to use. And I think people are using it more. I think part of the problem with the old system was that people were actually doing things outside the system because it was easier and quicker to do that, and then not going back into the system to update it. But now that you can use it, people are using it, and so on. It's capturing more of the reality, if you like.
And we still found the situation where the vast majority of figure information requests are still from sales reps trying to find out how much you moved on to spend.
So on to the complaints bit. This was really a request from the group to ask so that it could highlight at each scrutiny panel where the complaint was coming from. Because what we found was a lot there was a lot had been waiting for a long time in the waste management side of it. So that's sort of what we wanted to address here, I suppose.
Yeah.
So if you want to try and answer some of them, why you've got the highest complete or Brent or Sue or double up.
Closing things off on the system.
Yeah.
With waste management, it's the vast majority of them is my bin hasn't been emptied. It's basically my bin hasn't been emptied for some reason. So that comes through, we go and empty it, and then we are or have been lax in closing it off the system. The focus is to go and get the bin emptied, and not to close off the system. There is some others on waste management, but the vast majority are relating to bins not being emptied. So Glenn is now really trying to focus on let's not shoot ourselves in the foot by not updating the system, because the system is in some ways that's probably the easiest bit to do. But when you have very operationally focused individuals who want to go and get the stuff done outside, perhaps their attention to bureaucracy is not as sharp as it should be. So, but we're putting steps. Well, Glenn's put steps in place to sort that.
Yeah, just a lot of them. Well, got one there from 15 days, for instance. I'm sure that plays along with that.
We have been, as a department, we've been working closely with IT to get the training up to speed as well, and it has been mentioned in team meetings and things like that. So we're working very much closely and trying to improve that.
Okay. Right. I'm happy with that. Is everybody else happy with that? We can move on.
Thank you, Chair.
Environmental supplies.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Right, Chair. This is the regular update that comes on the Environmental Sustainability Strategy Action Plan. And the action plan is the main bit of it, really. So this is the current action plan we've got. There are 23 actions in there across the 8 sort of headings that are built on in section 4.2 of the report. On page 61 is the bullet points there. Show what the headings are. 23 actions. 17 are fine, they're on target. 3 are amber, 3 are red. So the red actions are shown within section 4.4. So there's one there, this annual energy awareness campaigns to run. we just haven't got the staff resources to do that anymore. With the staff reduction we've had, we just simply haven't got that to do. And in many ways, it was a nice to do, and really involved us sending out emails to signpost people to information that was already out there for them to get in any case. But that's the reason for that. And then the other two are probably best summed up by being over-enthusiastic targets from the Warwickshire Warwickshire Joint Municipal Waste Strategy plan, where they are really ambitious targets, and we're struggling to get there. The first one, hopefully we can make inroads to that in terms of the new recycling contract and how we may do things there. That should help with that one. The second one, reducing waste per household, that's a really tricky one, because that's really about people probably buying less, certainly eating more of what they buy, but probably buying less, and that's a tricky one, because to some extent people have a choice to buy stuff, don't they? And if they buy stuff, there are waste implications from that, and you might even argue that the more waste is created is a positive sign of a good economic position on that one. So that's a much more tricky one. And I do know that the Warwickshire Waste Partnership are, because I attend the meetings when we Council of London, are looking at how really sensible those targets are, and do we really need to refrain from them on those two there. And then the three amber ones, the first one is incorporate policies into the borough plan to help reduce traffic growth, blah, blah, blah. And that recently, this action plan thought that the adoption of the plan would be by 2016. We all know it's not been adopted yet, so that by default is not there. The other one is 80% of MBB suppliers to be local SMEs. We're at 78%, so to be honest, if we had another one, we'd probably tip over the 80%, so that's a bit of a flexible one, which we are making good progress there. And then retaining enhanced key wildlife sites within the borough's infrastructure. Almost all of them are in positive management. There's literally a handful that Matt and Eleanor, when she returns, will propose that. So we're almost there on that one. And then the other thing it deals with is that this current action plan runs for 2015. From 2015 to 2017. 2017 is nearly at the end, so we will have to, I'll rephrase that, we have a choice as to whether we want to have another one. It's not a statutory document, we don't have to have one. I think it would be sensible to have one for from January 2018 onwards, and I'm sort of working on the basis the panel will agree with that, because I've asked people in my team to look at what will that look like going forward, but it will be a slimmed down one with less actions in there, particularly ones where we've been dealing with external agencies or relying on external groups to help us do stuff. So for example, there's one in there about attending a this let me find which one it is. Oh yeah, assessment if adoption of climate local. Well, we've done that, so that won't be in there. And again, we won't revisit that one. So things like that will reduce. But what I'm proposing to do is the meeting is it end of January. I think it's very end of January, is to bring a new plan for the next time period and say here's the actions that we should be aiming for. Are you okay with that? And then it would go through probably a single member decision to adopt that, and then monitor how we're doing against that. But generally speaking, we're okay on stuff, getting where we want to be.
Any questions, Keith?
Yeah, on the positive side, you've done a lot of good work reducing the energy consumption here.
Yeah.
You get down the corridors, it's a real positive.
Yeah.
We need to do in here, but
this
it's really good stuff, the stuff you do on energy. It's good we've reduced our vehicle sizes and various things like that. That's really good stuff. Where we've failed is to do things like the sustainable transport in the borough plan. There's no cycling policy, no supplementary stuff for cycling in the borough plan. But also in here, really, really key, and my wife's really hot on this, is theme 10, air quality, where our aim was ensure air quality is not detrimental to health. It's not that air quality is legal, because obviously at the legal limits you're still detrimental to health, you're just legally detrimental to health. But all the evidence is saying that at the legal limits we are killing early thousands of people in the country, and in the borough there are probably 50, 60 people die early because of the effect of air quality. It is really annoying that we're removing monitoring, which is against what this policy says, continual air monitoring. And the air quality in Air Quality Zone 1, although it got better, that improvement has stopped, and there are still places where air quality is illegal in the front doors of homes on Corporation Street and Midland Road. We have air quality issues in Bedworth, which are barely being reported, and yeah, this is a really important theme, and just to sort of tick it, it's getting better, isn't good enough. And I think we can't just have this report saying it's getting better, because it's simply not true. We had an improvement between the 2005s and the 2009s, but that improvement has ground to a halt. We're not getting better air quality, and the science is saying the impact we're having due to the gyratory, due to Corporation Street and the bits in Bedworth, particularly Coventry Road, Baton Road, it's appalling, and we do need an action plan that includes it and actually has some action. I know it's not your area.
No, but I'll take that on board and discuss that with Ian in terms of whatever actions go into the revised action plan. I'll take that on board. I'll feed those back.
But there's absolutely nothing to do with that backing from county council anyway. It's more roads, so. I know that you don't know the fact that we'd have to build more roads, Keith, but we'd have to build more roads to take them out of central town. And we won't get that unless county council out, so.
Or better public transport, better margin. What
Yeah,
the government
could all walk, I suppose, but.
The government is just putting forward another 220 million to air quality, which is peanuts. But if we monitor we've got a problem, we can do something about it. If we say we haven't got a
It's
problem,
took on board. And so what you're asking the panel to do here is to
Note this report, and I'm assuming you want me to bring a
agree that
new one to the next
carry on.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think we're all in agreement that we want it to carry on, yeah?
yeah, and importantly, we'll think for things we can do something about, because this is quite a big document, and if we're having it focused on things that the council can improve.
Yeah, so, yeah, just put that to what we can influence here, really. Yeah. Okay, right, and the next one,
is
recycling.
Recycling, okay. Okay, so I'll just into this report, but Sue's here as well to answer any questions, and Katie as well at the back of the share the so Chair, this report really looks at just really an update on where we're at renewing the recycling, the curbside recycling contract. So the first bit of the report just gives a bit of background. Section 3 of the report really outlines what our current recycling service is and states what happens at the moment. Then Section 4 really outlines where we're at and why we're there and what we're going to do in the next couple of weeks actually. So 4.2 much earlier this year, it was agreed that we would go out for two sections of the curbside recycling this time. The physical collection aspect in one contract, and the handling and the sorting, the processing of whatever was collected in a separate one. That's because at the moment with palm recycling we have all the eggs in one basket, and it's a pretty precarious basket there, so it splits your risk and it allows you to do slightly different things. So that's what we're doing at the moment. And the first part of that is we are doing the materials reprocessing facility contract. So we're going out to tender to get a firm and a facility where we will deliver what we collect. And the reason for that is that contract and what comes out of that, and the prices and options, etc., will determine some of the aspects that will then need to be included in the contract for the physical picking it up from outside people's. Not least because we need to tell the contractor who's going to pick it up where we want them to take it is a fairly fundamental thing, and that didn't have a significant effect on their pricing. So those decisions were made quite a while ago. Sue's been doing loads and loads of work to pull that contract together. And we'll stress it's the first time we've gone out for this for 10 years, so it's everybody who did it last time is long gone, so it's not quite a start from scratch, but Sue's having to do an awful lot of work now. And we wanted to do it in a way that should allow us to take account of what the current market situations are, what the industry situations are, which are much different to 10 years ago, and in fact a lot different to 3 or 4 years ago. So it is important we do a really thorough job, which Sue is doing there. What we've also done is agreed to incorporate in the contract opportunities for North Warwickshire Borough Council and Rugby Borough Council to come on board with that contract and whoever the successful contractor is, on the hope that there could be some cost savings and opportunities there, and not least because if one of us is doing the procurement, the other two haven't got to do that, and we're taking the lead on this one this time. We'll ask them to return the favours at some point in the future there. Now, one of the things that's done, which I think is actually quite helpful in looking at the bigger picture of stuff, we've had to, Sue has had to pull together the contractual documentation, the tender requirements in such a way that it can meet the requirements of each of the 3 councils now and what they might want to do in the future as well. So we've had to do it on lots. So we're saying if we did this for this council, what would it be? If for that one, what would the price be if we did individually different things? What would the price be if 2 of us did the same thing and one did something else? And what would the price be if we all did the same thing? And that might be what that thing might be. So, where that comes in most particularly is how you deliver it to the gate. So, are we going to continue to have separate paper and card and then all the other dry recycling tools? So you go with 2, well, you drop off in 2 different places. Or, because Rugby already has a co-mingle service, what is the implication of having it all in one bin and we tip it all off and you do what Rugby and Coventry are doing or what have you. So that's how the contract's been constructed, that all of us can choose what's the most financially advantageous from that. Because obviously the finances and the costs are a big thing. What we've also been doing as well, there's a couple of other things we've done. Katie in particular has done a lot of analysis of what's happening in the rest of the country and the industry and where things are going at the moment. And what that indicates is that the majority of councils are collecting in a commingled way, and that the materials recycling facilities, the reprocessors now have got smarter in being able to separate the various materials out there, and in particular glass and paper and card. It also acknowledges the fact that compared to 5 years ago, and certainly 10 years ago, in terms of paper and card, there's now loads more card and much less paper because of online shopping, so it's your Amazon deliveries, etc. And you know, we know that papers themselves are getting skinnier. If you take a pad paper, it's a lot thinner than it was. More people are reading things on electronic devices, and there's probably quite a significant age demographic on that as well. So those things have changed, and the ability to take glass out of co-mingle has improved dramatically. And what we actually found is Warwickshire County Council were incredibly helpful, I have to say. Well, they often are, but in this particular case, they were extremely helpful in organising an industry day where they pulled in, I think it was 10 companies we had there from who do this job. So we've got different companies. So officers from the councils, all the districts, all the collection authorities were asked to attend, and the county were out to ask them, right, what's good for you, what's bad for you, what's the most cost effective, what's the real pain in the backside for you if we do that, what makes your life easier, etc. and I think it's fair to say we were a bit surprised at what came out of there, because what came out of there was that glass is not really a problem. 2 of the companies actually said, we want glass, because I think what they were saying, it sort of weighs down the stuff as it goes on the conveyor belt and stops it flying over the place. I didn't quite understand that, but they were really keen saying that glass was better for them than not having it in there. And they all said that sorting paper and card, taking it out of commingle, is not an issue for them, with the markets they're going to sell it onto. Different issue with Palm, because Palm basically are a paper making company, and they wanted to get the top quality card to feed their processes. There's lots of other uses for paper and card that don't have to be the same quality standard as Palm. But it was dead helpful to be able to have that fairly open conversation. Well, it was an extremely open conversation actually with the company saying what's good or bad and what have you. So what came out of that is that from the materials reprocessing company's point of view, commingle is not a bad thing. It's not something that they're going to go, oh, we're going to charge you a fortune for that. It's not a bad thing. And that seems to be the way that many parts of the country are going. Not all parts, and it's not like 95% of councils are doing that. I think it's 53% of councils are doing that. So that seemed to be to us to think, well, hang on, we might need to do that. That might be an option we want to take if the price is right. And there's a couple of other financial reasons why that could be advantageous, is that in terms of costs of collecting it, commingled and everything in one bin that you put to the back of the truck and empty that one bin on a lift is cheaper to collect, because you can do it faster, because you've not got to have the guys or girls on the back of the truck picking one off, put it there. It's a lot faster, in, out, bin, out. So that's going to be quicker there. The trucks that you need for that, you just need one container, where the other ones you need a split spot there. So it's about £40,000 a truck cheaper to buy that. It's also a lot easier if one of yours breaks down to get a spare one, because you're just asking for a standard one there. So the capital cost of any contractor that's going to buy their vehicles to collect it becomes a lot less. And you haven't got really what is becoming a quite substantial cost of providing new and replacement inserts for our bins. And I think we're up to something, it's about 2,000 a year we're replacing. And then we've got the new one. So we've got about 400 new properties a year. So we're up to about 2,500 we're having to keep replacing. And they're not cheap to do that. So financially there are some pluses from the collection aspect to going to commingle. There's also evidence that on average, and obviously an average is a statistic, so that you have to be careful with statistics, and an average basically says this is what it is, there's outliers either side. But on average, what RAPAR have found there is that collection methods with commingle collection, on average, are getting about 25.5% recycling rates on dry recycling. It's nothing to do with grass and food and stuff, just dry recycling. The average for two-stream, which is what we've got, is 23%. So there's a 2.5% difference there. And at the moment, we are averaging just under 20%. So we're below the average. Now, some of that is because of the things that Palm, our current provider, can and can't take. So the other thing that we'll do within the contract is have a broader mix of materials that can go, because they'll go to different places that Palm haven't got access to. So in that sense, it would seem that it may be financially advantageous to go to commingle, and it may well be that we'll get higher rates of recycling, and that's not least because one of the a limiting factor that we've got, and I'll come on to customer feedback on this in a second, is that because of our caddy, you've got a relatively small place to stick your Amazon boxes when they arrive. If you can put them all in the bin, you can put more stuff in there. And there's no two ways about it. It has got to be simpler to put everything into one big bin and split stuff into one bin and a half. And the simpler things are in life, generally speaking, the more people will do them, particularly the men amongst us who have to put this stuff in the bin. So there seems to be some stuff like that. And I think what we, well, I know the way we've structured the contract gives us that opportunity to look at that and see, is that a goer from the materials reprocessing point of view? Definitely from the collection point of view, it will be cheaper for commingled and dual stream. And I think from a customer perspective, it's an easier thing to sell. And the evidence that we've been able to gather, well, Katie has sorted out, not me, Katie, has sorted out, indicates that councils adopting that seem to get better recycling rates. So we then thought, well, that's okay, so that sounds like it could be financially advantageous for the council. What do our households think about that? What are our customers going to think? Now, our presumption was, as in the waste team, was that people would say, that's okay, it's less complicated than the one we've got, we'll go for that. But we wanted to check that. So there's a couple of surveys being done or customer information things being done. One of which the results is in Appendix 1 of your report on pages 86 and 87 and probably 88, I think. 88 and 89, which is sort of a via our website one we did. We only got 106 respondents to that, so that's a very small sample. But what that was basically saying is that people were fairly happy to stay as we are. They'd be fairly happy to go to co-mingle. They ain't too fussed which one we do. They don't want to go to curbside sort. So that's what came out of that. But that was a small percentage. So we took the decision we needed to try and get a bigger sample than that. So we did another poll via social media, which again Kate and Sue were involved in, because you can write in the top left-hand corner a postage stamp what I know about social media. And as it said in the report, because that's only closed recently, I've got the results of that, Chair. I'll just pass them around there, which is a much bigger sample. And what the bigger sample said, really, was again, people are not too fussed which way it goes, but people are saying that probably one bin for everything would be the way they'd want to go if they had a choice on that. And it's about 2/3 to 1/3. In fact, it's almost exactly 2/3 to 1/3, saying that that's what they prefer to do. So I think what we've taken from that is that whichever way we go, we're not going to upset the residents of the borough, really. So whatever comes out really as the most financially advantageous, whichever that is going to be acceptable to the people in the borough. So I think there's some credence in whatever comes out of that. And I just felt that on that financial acceptability as well, we're dead keen to recycle more. For three reasons, really. The more we recycle, the more it saves the county council. The more it saves the county council, the more it is likely to save in the bigger picture the public person, hence the council taxpayers of the because they pay council tax to us, but some of it goes to the county council. So minimising the county council's waste disposables is a good thing for our residents. It's better for the planet. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing for the communities to recycle as much as we can. So that's the right thing to do. So the more we can do the right thing, that must be the right thing. And from our perspective, the more we can recycling tonnage, the more the county council will pay us in recycling credits, which is another source of income for us. So it's good for us to do that as well. So that's really where we're at with stuff. So that's why we've gone out for in the order we've gone out for the materials reprocessing and then the curbside stuff. That's why Sue's done the work to structure the contract to give us those options and also to give North Warwickshire and Rugby options, and we're moving forward on the joint work in there. That will be launched very soon, like by the end of this month is the target to launch that. So results of that back and have analysed that in conjunction with North Warwickshire and Rugby. That's one of the downsides of partnership working. They'll have to have a say in what we go with in the end. Get that done after Christmas. We'll then know what really is the most financially advantageous method to use, and where we want the collection company to take the stuff to, and then we can go out with a collection contract saying this is what we want, this is where we need to take it to, give us your pricing. And that's about it, Chair. What I was going to say.
Is that you sure?
I'm sure.
Right, go on, okay.
Right, recycling's what got me into local politics, and I know an awful lot about it, and an awful lot has changed. The commingled is far better than it was a decade ago, because a decade ago it was a really simple conveyor belt with an angle, and it was really primitive. So there is actually good reasons why we went with a twin stream, because 10 years ago most of the paper going into commingled would have a hard job getting through clean. So there's obviously been technological changes, and we've lost a lot of newspapers. The Telegraph readers are dying, people are using tablets. Yeah, the world is changing. But it is important to know that the system we've got does do a good job of getting that paper recycled. And if in the trade-off we're looking at how much glass is recycled, if that glass is being used in road bedding or something, the actual environmental benefit of recycling more glass and less paper is lost. So at the end of this process, and when we do the evaluation, we actually need to judge the carbon metric. Okay? Are we getting good recycling out? And so I do hope, and I know these people are on board with it, but just in terms of the political thing, it is not just the tonnage or the percentage. There has to be that quality there, because you don't save the planet by recycling aluminium cans underneath roads. And there is a clear work by people like RAP in actually measuring the carbon impact of recycling different things. And it was paper. That was clearly, when we were here 10 years ago, massively brilliant to recycle. There's less paper. But yeah, I do hope we're not burning any bridges. I don't think we are. And we're actually really looking at the quality. And 10 years ago I said, if we need to, we should not recycle.
We have to try and stick to this, not 10 years ago. But 7:15
Yeah.
now, so I want to try and stick to this.
Yeah, the point I was trying to make is it's about quality. And yeah, if glass is a problem, it's better not to recycle glass and chuck it through the incinerator.
Okay.
I just want to respond to that, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah.
It's just part of the report, you'll see that part of the evaluation is on material quality of markets. Glass, for example, obviously going to aggregate and etc. That will be marked on the evaluation.
Yeah.
Bad. Or not going to aggregate.
Yeah. Yeah, Julia.
Thanks, Chair. I've just got two questions, really. Well, question. 3.9. I was astonished when I read it. Our waste collected from Nuneaton is transported to Williams Waste, located on the A5, and then transferred up to Teesside.
Yes.
I was absolutely astounded. I thought there'd be somewhere locally.
Palm did actually have a facility in Coventry, which was actually shut down, unfortunately, and then the main facility that they run through wards recycling is Teesside. So they've taken on that cost for that. So that's not impacted on our collections.
But it's not very good for the planet.
It's not.
No, it isn't.
Not at all.
Where is Williams Waste then on the A5?
I could explain to you. You know where the crossroads is between Whitestone and Lutterworth? You've got those crossroads.
Whitestone and
Yeah. So you
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Straight across there, keep going, and when you get to the A5, it's just there. Yeah.
And secondly, Chair, I commend that they've done a very good homework and report and a tender form, and I congratulate the department on doing it. So.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is on the contract, we wouldn't get bitten again as it's getting tied into a long contract, would we?
No, sorry, I should have said that. So the materials handling one, the first one going out, we're looking at a 3 + 1 + 1. So 3 years initial one, and then able to extend it by 1 and another years, if we want to do that, which gives us that opportunity to come out of that. The collection one will need to be at least 5 years, and the reason for that is any company will want at least 5 years to write off their trucks on the collection one. That's just, well, no, we'll rephrase that. You could go for 3 years, but you'll still pay the write-off costs of the plant out over that 3 years. So that will need to be slightly longer.
And would there be a chance of us doing that or not?
We looked at that probably 12 months ago now, and it's financially prohibitive for us to do that.
Okay.
No, it's not.
It's worth a question, but if we can't.
Just on that point about the longer, different lengths of contract, if our reprocessors change, then you have to build in the, you've got 3 + 1 + 1, you've got 5, you've then got to have a process to then change where it goes.
Yes.
That's what the problem was last time.
If it ends with a different company winning the next contract. If it doesn't do, but yes.
I know that was the problem last time, wasn't it?
It's a and that's why we had, say with Palm, it's a long contract and all the eggs in one basket. A bit stuffed really.
Yeah. So, okay, congratulations on the report. Is there anything you're asking us to do on that?
Just note the report, Chairman,
the
and
report,
that's,
Any more questions before we move on? No? Good. Right. How will you deliver the Borough plan? Brief and note. I believe you asked for this last time.
Yes.
So you're happy with brief and note? Yeah. Good. Sorted. Well,
One thing that came up to the Cabinet last night is reduced planning enforcement. They're taking out planning enforcement about 20,000 or something. The Borough plan is actually looking at us going from 400 houses being built a year to 1,200 in the beginning of the 2020s, which means we need 3 times more planning enforcement. So I think there is issues about resourcing our planning department and the craziness of what we're expected to do with the Borough plan. And planning enforcement is something that's going the wrong way, and if the Borough plan is adopted or not, we need to make sure we can enforce conditions and street cleaning and things.
planning enforcement of cleaning streets.
No, when people build houses, you have to enforce when they operate all the planning conditions, and the enforcement officers go and say, you haven't got your real washers in, or you're starting work at 6 in the morning, you're only supposed to do it at 7:30. So the planning enforcement is minimal at this council and is being cut at the time when we're planning to treble almost the amount of houses we're built.
Well, I'm sure that'll come up on the risk register, won't it? Sure. Or can we ask it?
It's checked on cycling, but I would actually say that whilst you county council as a highway authority can enforce that as well. There's specific aspects of the Highways Act that make it that you have to have it makes it illegal to put mud onto the road. So there's a second bite there to say we're going to shut your site down until you get a wheel wash there. And I know that's the case because I've done it when I worked at Coventry County Council. Had a couple of skips dropped across the front.
Well, I don't think Councillor Dark was talking about a specific case. I think what he was implying is that if in future this target of 1,200 houses a year is adopted, then the budget for enforcing planning conditions would have to be increased accordingly. Of course, that what we're talking about is next year's budget. I doubt the plan will be in place through next financial year, the way things are going anyway. But no, I certainly think it's something that should be flagged up in future reports, as has been said before.
How do you feel about that? Anybody? Well, we can look at it. We can look at it. Put it down as a note for something to watch. Planning enforcement. Right. Forward plan. 92. Has anybody got anything to say on the forward plan? 92.
Just a quick one, what was happening about Sill? Because that keeps getting pushed back, and it's now been pushed back to February. It was originally September, wasn't it? But obviously that's where we get all the... Well, January it's been pushed back to.
think that's,
You'd have to ask Catherine, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's...
I think it's on the economic OSP work programme.
Plus it hasn't actually been adopted, has it? So,
No.
no.
Isn't it on economic?
I think so.
Yeah.
I said it keeps getting built back. If it never goes anywhere, then we never scrutinise it, and it just sort of never happens. It's really important.
Well, I suggest you put a suggestion form into the economic.
Yeah.
I think it is on the economics work programme, so it's just a case of bringing it forward to a meeting.
Okay. Some more colleagues to deal with it. Work programme 96. See, we're going on with these now, aren't we? Right,
Just
so,
a couple of changes on there. The allotments, and the allotment strategy will be coming to the January meeting. Wasn't room on this agenda, Chair, and I know that Dave Truslow's been busy with various other projects, so January for that. And otherwise, there's the air quality to that meeting, and also the dog control orders, and I believe that Paul will be bringing some information around the new grounds maintenance contract, which will need to be renewed in 2019. So there may be a work programme, a working group or something like that.
I'm going to have another long meeting, is what you're saying, yeah?
Well, you can move some of those to March if you want.
No, that'd be fine. We'll get
There
them
might be
out of
something
the way.
else for March, won't there?
Right, okay, brilliant. Is everybody okay with your work programme?
Yes.
Brilliant. And then next is any other items? Well, is that any other items? Thank you very much.
Just a quick question: we got a tree officer come back, or we get anywhere with that? No.
He's still off. Can't replace him. He's still off Bill. No, what's happening?
Chair, you requested the information about the green